There was a time when these songs played on every radio station in the country. Some were massive hits, some were cultural flashpoints, and then slowly and quietly, they disappeared from the airwaves. Too controversial, too complicated, or simply too honest for modern broadcasting standards. So today we're counting down 12 songs from the 1960s you can't hear on radio anymore. Number 12, The Unknown Soldier by The Doors, 1968. The Doors released The Unknown Soldier in March 1968, and it became one of the most explicitly anti-war recordings released by a major American act during the Vietnam era. The song describes a military execution in visceral detail. Jim Morrison's vocal performance builds through the track to a point where the sound of a rifle shot interrupts the arrangement, followed by a section of silence before the song resolves. The band performed the song live with theatrical staging. That included a simulated execution of Morrison on stage, which Morrison would then recover from as the song concluded. The performances were documented and discussed in the music press. Several radio stations refused to play it on the grounds that the subject matter was inappropriate for broadcast. The combination of the explicit war imagery, the simulated execution element embedded in the recording itself, and the Doors' existing reputation as a band that pushed against broadcast norms made the song effectively unplayable on a significant portion of American commercial radio. It reached number 39 on the Billboard Hot 100, a commercial performance that accurately reflected the barriers the song faced at the broadcast level. It's all over. The Doors had already been accumulating a complicated relationship with broadcast media throughout the late 1960s. Jim Morrison's behavior at live concerts, his arrests, and the band's general refusal to soften their presentation for mainstream acceptability had made them a band that radio programmers handled carefully. The Unknown Soldier concentrated all of those complications into a single recording that arrived in March 1968, the same month as the My Lai massacre, which would not become public knowledge until November 1969, and asked American audiences to think directly about what was being done in their name. Number 11, My Generation by The Who, 1965. The BBC banned My Generation upon its release in November 1965, citing Roger Daltrey's stuttering vocal delivery as potentially offensive to people with speech impediments. That justification was widely understood at the time, and since, as a cover for The Real Objection, which was the song's direct, unqualified message that the older generation should move aside, delivered without softening or nuance. Pete Townshend had written the song on a train after his Packard hearse, a prized possession, was towed away on the orders of the Queen Mother, who reportedly found it unsightly near Buckingham Palace. The combination of class resentment, generational impatience, and genuine musical aggression that came out of that experience produced something that the BBC correctly identified as dangerous, even if it named the wrong reason for its objection. The BBC ban did not prevent the song from reaching number 2 on the UK charts. Radio Luxembourg and pirate stations played it extensively, and the combination of ban and popularity created a feedback loop that made the song more famous and more important than it might otherwise have been. It received extensive airplay through the 1970s and 1980s on rock radio formats, but as broadcasting standards shifted and the rock format itself evolved, My Generation became more of a historical artifact than an active part of radio playlists. Classic rock stations occasionally feature it, but the song's explicit confrontationalism, its refusal to offer any retrospective softening of its central message, makes it uncomfortable for the playlist-driven, advertiser-sensitive environment of modern radio. Radio today prefers rebellion that has been safely historicized, and My Generation refuses to be historicized. It still carries its edge. Number 10, Fixin' to Die Rag by Country Joe and the Fish, 1967. Country Joe McDonald and the Fish recorded Fixin' to Die Rag in 1967 as a direct, sardonic commentary on the Vietnam War, a song that treated the subject of young men being sent to die in an unjust conflict with a darkly comic energy that was unlike anything else on American radio at the time. The song was performed memorably at Woodstock in 1969, where Country Joe led a call-and-response with the crowd before launching into the record, creating one of the most politically charged moments in the festival's documented history.
1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give it.
The song was not widely played on mainstream American radio even at the time of its release. It was too politically explicit for most stations' tastes in 1967, when the music industry was still cautiously navigating how directly it could address the war without losing advertisers or licenses. It received far more airplay on college radio stations and the emerging underground FM format than on commercial AM radio.
Well, ain't no time to wonder why we all gonna die.
Today, its combination of explicit anti-war politics, the sardonic humor of its delivery, and the call and response element that was so powerful at Woodstock makes it essentially unplayable on commercial radio, which has no format designed to accommodate a song that treats military casualties with darkly comic directness. It remains one of the most pointed pieces of political music the decade produced, preserved in the Woodstock documentary where generations have encountered it, but without a broadcast home that can hold it comfortably in 2025.
1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask me.
Number 9. Ohio by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, 1970.
This summer I hear the drumming for Teddy.
Ohio was released in May 1970 by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, just weeks after the shootings at Kent State University on May 4th, in which 4 students, Allison Krauss, Jeffrey Miller, Sandra Schuyer, and William Schroeder, were killed by National Guard soldiers during a campus protest against the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia. Neil Young saw a photograph of the aftermath in a magazine and wrote the song the same day. The band recorded it within 48 hours of Young writing it, and it was pressed and shipped to radio stations immediately. The speed from event to released recording was almost without precedent for a major act.
Gotta get down to it, soldiers on.
Several American radio stations refused to play it, citing its explicit naming of President Nixon and its characterization of the National Guard action as murder. The song was considered by those stations to be too politically inflammatory for broadcast during an already tense national moment. Student strikes and campus closures were happening across the country in the days after Kent State, and many broadcast executives were making cautious decisions about content that could be seen as inflaming tensions further. In the decades since, Ohio has become one of the most recognized protest songs in American history and appears regularly in documentary films and historical retrospectives about the Vietnam era.
For dead in Ohio. For dead.
But its explicit political content, its naming of a specific president, its specific characterization of a specific government action as wrong means that commercial radio, which operates under a general philosophy of not alienating any portion of its audience with direct political statements, treats it carefully. It is a song more likely to be discussed as a historical artifact than played as part of a broadcast rotation. Classic rock stations that cover the same period occasionally feature it, but it never settled into the regular rotation that more nostalgically comfortable songs from the same era occupy. Number 8. Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday, 1939, essential through the 1960s.
Strange fruit hanging from the...
Strange Fruit was recorded by Billie Holiday in 1939 and stands as one of the most powerful and devastating pieces of recorded music in American history. The song was written by Abel Meeropol, a Jewish schoolteacher from the Bronx, who published it first as a poem under the pseudonym Lewis Allen. He was moved to write it after seeing a photograph of a lynching. The imagery in the song describes the aftermath of a lynching in the American South with a precision that has never lost its capacity to shock. The contrast between the pastoral beauty of the southern landscape and the horror of what is hanging from the trees is one of the most sustained pieces of moral indictment in American art.
From the poplar trees.
Columbia Records refused to record it. Holiday's label at the time was unwilling to release the material even for an artist of her stature. She recorded it for the small Commodore label instead, and it was effectively blacklisted from major radio stations throughout the 1940s and 1950s. Mitch Miller, then at Columbia, reportedly called it a piece of propaganda. The pushback was institutional and thorough, and it reflected the degree to which the song was understood as something that could not be accommodated within the normal frameworks of popular entertainment.
Bulging eyes.
By the 1960s, Strange Fruit had become an essential piece of the civil rights movement's cultural landscape. Nina Simone performed versions in concert that brought it to new and younger audiences, and the song appeared in documentaries and concert recordings that gave it enormous visibility even as commercial radio continued to avoid it. Today, the song remains essentially unplayable on commercial radio, not because it has been formally banned anywhere, but because its imagery is so graphic and so specific, and its subject matter so weighted with historical pain, that no playlist algorithm and no program director can comfortably integrate it into a standard rotation. It is a song that exists entirely outside of normal broadcast frameworks, which may be the most honest way to describe a recording that has always been more important than entertainment radio knows how to handle.
Strange fruit hanging from the...
Number 7. Society's Child by Janis Ian, 1967.
She says I can't see you anymore.
Janis Ian wrote Society's Child when she was 14 years old and recorded it when she was 15. The song describes an interracial teenage romance told from the perspective of a white girl whose parents and social environment force her to end the relationship. It was rejected by 22 record labels before Verve Forecast released it in 1967. It reached number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 that year, a remarkable commercial showing for a song on an independent label that had been rejected across the entire industry. Multiple radio stations refused to play it. In Atlanta, Georgia, a radio station that played the song received bomb threats. In other markets, stations reported being pressured by local advertisers to remove it from rotation. The resistance was direct and specific. The song's subject matter, a sympathetic portrayal of an interracial romantic relationship, was considered inflammatory in parts of the country, where that premise was not merely controversial but actively dangerous. Janis Ian was 15 years old and subjected to hate mail and personal threats as a result of the song's reception. The fact that it charted at all under those conditions is a testament to the audiences who sought it out and requested it, despite the broadcast resistance. Today, the song is not formally banned anywhere, but it occupies a complicated space in the radio landscape. Oldies and classic pop stations that cover the late 1960s rarely included in rotation. The combination of its specific subject matter, the era it comes from, and the particular kind of discomfort that accompanies discussions of race in America means that most program directors simply leave it off the playlist without ever formally acknowledging why. Janis Ian has spoken extensively in interviews about the song and its reception over the decades. Her account of what it meant to be 15 years old at the center of a national controversy remains one of the more remarkable personal documents of the decade.
She says I can't see you anymore.
Number 6. Eve of Destruction by Barry Maguire, 1965.
We're on the eve of destruction.
Barry Maguire's Eve of Destruction reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in September 1965, making it one of the most commercially successful protest songs in American history. The song was recorded in a single take in July 1965, with Maguire singing directly from a handwritten lyric sheet, and producer Lou Adler released it despite, or because of, the rawness of the performance. P.F. Sloan had written the lyrics in a white heat, and Maguire's delivery matched the urgency of the writing.
There'll be no one to save with the world in a grave.
The song was banned by several radio stations in the United States and by the BBC in the UK, which cited its explicit discussion of nuclear war, racial violence, and political hypocrisy as unsuitable for broadcast. The Armed Forces Radio Service, which broadcasts programming to American military personnel overseas, refused to air it. The band generated exactly the kind of controversy that pushed the record to the top of the charts. The publicity surrounding the banning was more effective promotion than anything a label could have purchased. Bob Dylan, whose writing had clearly influenced the song's approach, reportedly found it derivative. That critical perspective did not prevent it from becoming a touchstone of mid-1960s political music.
Tell me over and over.
Number 5. In the Ghetto by Elvis Presley, 1969. Elvis Presley released In the Ghetto in April 1969, and it reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, one of the most commercially successful, explicitly social commentary records of his career. The song, written by Mac Davis, tells the story of a child born into poverty in Chicago whose life ends in violence. Presented as part of a cycle that the song insists is a social and political failure rather than an individual one. For Elvis, who had spent most of the 1960s making films and recording light commercial material with diminishing artistic ambition, it was a significant and genuine artistic statement, a sign that his 1968 television special had opened a door to a different kind of work.
Take a look at you and me. Are we too blind?
Some southern radio stations were uncomfortable with the song's subject matter and played it reluctantly, or not at all. The directness with which the song addressed poverty, race, and social conditions in American cities was, for some programmers in 1969, too politically charged for comfortable rotation. The song's commercial success, reaching number 3 nationally and receiving extensive mainstream airplay, overrode most of those regional objections, but the resistance was real in specific markets.
Plays in the street as a cold wind blows in the ghetto.
Today, In the Ghetto occupies a peculiar position in Elvis's catalog. It is too serious, too politically specific, and too emotionally demanding for the generally celebratory, nostalgic frame through which most Elvis radio programming operates. Classic hit stations that play Suspicious Minds and Hound Dog with regularity tend to leave In the Ghetto on the shelf because it requires a different kind of attention from the listener than those records do. Commercial radio formats are built around songs that reward passive listening, and In the Ghetto is a song that asks something of the person hearing it. That is not a criticism of the song. It is an observation about what modern radio has decided it cannot accommodate. Number 4. A Day in the Life by the Beatles, 1967. A Day in the Life was the closing track on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and one of the most discussed recordings of the entire decade. The BBC banned it from broadcast in May 1967, before the album was even officially released, citing a line that it interpreted as a reference to drug use. The specific interpretation was disputed by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and the line in question was ambiguous enough that the BBC's reading was far from the only possible one. None of that changed the outcome.
I'm a coach and grabbed my hat, made the bus in seconds.
The band gave the song a notoriety that further amplified an album that was already generating unprecedented cultural attention. By the time Sgt. Pepper's was released in June of 1967, A Day in the Life was already the most talked about track on the most anticipated record of the year. The BBC ban did not prevent the album from selling. It did not prevent the song from being heard. What it did was add a specific layer of controversy to a recording that was already operating well outside the boundaries of what commercial radio typically played. At 7 minutes, with an orchestral crescendo and a final piano chord that decays for nearly a minute, it was never going to fit comfortably in a standard broadcast rotation regardless of its content. Today, A Day in the Life is regularly cited in lists of the greatest songs ever recorded. It appears in documentaries, in critical essays, and in classroom discussions about 1960s music. It almost never appears in radio playlists. Its length, its structure, and its refusal to resolve into anything conventionally satisfying all make it incompatible with the format-driven environment of modern radio. The BBC ban was lifted long ago. The song simply doesn't fit anywhere that broadcast radio is willing to go.
Now they know how many holes it takes to fill the album hole.
Number 3, I Am the Walrus by the Beatles, 1967.
I am he as you are, he as you are, me and we.
The BBC banned I Am the Walrus in December of 1967, shortly after its release as the B-side of Hello, Goodbye, citing a lyric that referenced a Shakespearean text in a context the BBC found objectionable. John Lennon had written the song deliberately to defy interpretation. He had learned that English schoolteachers were analyzing Beatles lyrics in their classes and set out to write something so absurd and so layered with contradictory references that no analysis could pin it down. The song drew from Lewis Carroll, from Edward Lear's nonsense poetry, from a police siren Lennon heard outside his house, and from a deliberate desire to confuse. It succeeded completely on every one of those terms. The ban was, by most accounts, the most specific and detailed attempt the BBC had made to that point to identify and restrict Beatles content, and it demonstrated the degree to which the corporation's relationship with the band had become openly adversarial by late 1967. The song reached #1 in the UK as the A-side of the Hello Goodbye single, except it wasn't the A-side. Lennon wanted it to be. Paul McCartney's Hello Goodbye was chosen instead. The specific question of which song should have been the A-side has been debated by Beatles scholars ever since. Today, I Am the Walrus appears rarely on radio. Its length, over 4 minutes, is manageable, but its structure is not. It has no conventional verse-chorus architecture, its lyrical content resists any comfortable interpretation, and the orchestral arrangement builds to a crescendo of seemingly random voices and sounds that does not resolve in any way that a standard radio format can accommodate. It is played at Beatles tribute events and occasionally featured in documentary contexts. Commercial radio treats it as a curiosity rather than a record to be programmed. Number 2, The Star-Spangled Banner by Jimi Hendrix, Woodstock 1969. Jimi Hendrix performed his instrumental version of the American national anthem at Woodstock in August 1969, specifically in the early morning hours of August 18th, after most of the festival's audience had been awake for 2 days. The performance, which used the guitar to evoke the sounds of bombs falling and the screaming of the wounded, was explicitly interpreted by Hendrix as a commentary on the Vietnam War and on American society's relationship with its own mythology. He said so directly in subsequent interviews. The performance was not a song in the conventional sense. It was a piece of instrumental improvisation built on a melody that every American had been required to learn and perform in school. That combination was, for many people, deeply provocative. Some veterans organizations objected formally. Some radio stations declined to play the Woodstock recording when it was released on the festival's soundtrack album. The FBI, which had been monitoring Hendrix's activities and associations since at least 1969, noted the performance in documents that became available under Freedom of Information requests decades later. Today, the Woodstock version of the national anthem is one of the most discussed and most analyzed musical performances of the 1960s. It appears in documentaries, in historical retrospectives, and in academic discussions of music and politics. It does not appear on radio. The combination of its length, approximately 4 minutes, its lack of vocals, and above all, its political implications makes it something that commercial radio simply does not know where to put. It is simultaneously one of the most famous pieces of American music and one of the least likely to ever appear between 2 3-minute pop songs on a drive time playlist. Number 1, Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead by the Munchkins. Originally from the 1939 film The Wizard of Oz, and performed by the studio chorus representing the Munchkins, this song re-entered public consciousness and charted in the UK in 1967, following renewed interest in the film among counterculture audiences. It reached number 1 in the UK in 2013, following the death of Margaret Thatcher, when a campaign to push the song to the top of the chart succeeded, causing the BBC to make the unusual decision to play only a brief excerpt rather than the full recording on its official chart show. The decision sparked a national debate about editorial censorship on public broadcasting. BBC Radio 2, which would normally play any song that reached number 1, declined to broadcast it in full, a decision that had no precedent in the modern chart era, and that demonstrated exactly how a song can be technically available while being effectively banned from the airwaves by institutional discomfort. The controversy made the song simultaneously more famous and less playable than it had ever been. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more music content like this.